Welcome, my friend, to the story of how dream interpreters and fortune tellers would make way for Cyrus the Great to establish the Persian Empire, one of the most influential and biggest empires to ever exist. King Astyages and the Medes were one of the biggest empires to exist in the world to this point in history, and the collapse of this massive empire all originates in one of the king's bad dreams. King Astyages was king of the Median Empire from 585 to 550 BC. In King Astyages' infamous dream, a flood emerged from his princess daughter Mandane, and not only flooded his entire city, but reached out to flood all of Asia. Some translations will even describe it as the king dreaming of his daughter Mandane urinating this flood, which would reach out and flood the entirety of Asia. But for now, we will stick with this dream just being the flooding version of events rather than his daughter Mandane urinating all over the city. Now, Astyages did not know exactly what to make of his dream here, so he would go seek the opinion of his trusted magi and see what their interpretation of the dream was. The magi were essentially a religious group of society who did have a decent amount of power and influence over ancient societies due to their specialized practice and knowledge of magic, astronomy, astrology, alchemy, and other forms of esoteric knowledge. These magi tell Astyages that he shouldn't need to worry as long as his daughter doesn't marry an ethnically Median man of noble rank. Thus, Astyages was to see that his daughter would marry a mere Persian, who were thought to be an inferior race of people to their Median rulers at this time. Even after this, though, Astyages would have another dream, this time with vines coming from Mandane's womb, reaching out all over Asia. The Magi interpret the dream as meaning that this child between Astyages' daughter and her Persian husband will be a king who will eventually dethrone King Astyages. They tell him he must have this child done away with if he wishes to retain his kingship in the future. So King Astyages, out of fear for his own safety, decides that he will have his grandchild killed. King Astyages feels too bad to kill the baby himself, so that's when he brings on his right-hand man and general, Harpagus, to come assist and complete the deed for him. He informs Harpagus of the plan to leave the baby out in the wilderness to die. However, Harpagus is distraught and doesn't want to do this either. So he brings in another person to help get rid of the royal baby, this person being a shepherd from a small village. The shepherd takes the baby back home to his wife and tells her what Harpagus and the king have ordered he must do. The shepherd's wife was also pregnant at the same time, though, and had just given birth to a stillborn child that same exact day. Her idea was to return the corpse of the recently stillborn baby to Harpagus and the king as evidence that the deed had been done, when in reality they would be raising the royal baby in their baby's place in the meantime. So the couple would just leave their recently stillborn baby out in the wilderness for a few days and return the body back to Harpagus as if it was the king's grandson, while they secretly raise Astyages' grandson, Cyrus, as their own child. This all went smoothly until when the boy reached about 10 years of age. In Cyrus's local town, they were playing a game where the boys would vote on one boy to be king among them. And in this game, 10-year-old Cyrus was voted king over his peers. As king, Cyrus disrespected a nobleman's son for not obeying his orders, which angered the boy's father, and thus the boy's father went to complain directly to King Astyages himself. King Astyages then walked over to the 10-year-old Cyrus and confronted him directly. Our author of this scene, Herodotus, describes Cyrus explaining to King Astyages, "My lord," replied the boy, "I only treated him as he deserved. I was chosen king in play by the boys of our village because they thought me the best for it. He himself was one of the boys who chose me. All the others did according to my orders, but he refused and made light of them, until at last he got his due reward. If for this I deserve to suffer punishment, here I am, ready to submit to it." After this well-sounded, humble response from the boy, Herodotus describes the moment as King Astyages is coming to the realization of who this 10-year-old boy truly was. While the boy was yet speaking, Astyages was struck with a suspicion who he was. He thought he saw something in the character of his face, like his own, and there was a nobleness about the answer he had made, besides which his age seemed to tally with the time when his grandchild was exposed. Astonished at all this, Astyages could not speak for a while. Upon regaining his ability to speak and think clearly, Astyages immediately felt a heap of rage for being betrayed by his general Harpagus, who he 10 years earlier had entrusted with the orders of having this baby killed. King Astyages got Harpagus to tell the entire truth of what really happened. But Astyages played it off initially, saying it wasn't a big deal, and he's happy Cyrus didn't die because he was feeling bad about the whole ordeal now. He told Harpagus to come by for a banquet dinner and celebration, and that all was forgiven. All was not forgiven by Astyages, though, who wanted revenge on Harpagus, and wanted to make an example of Harpagus to others that if you do not directly obey the king, you will be punished. So at this banquet, Astyages enacts his revenge in chilling detail, as described by our author Herodotus. Astyages meanwhile took the son of Harpagus and slew him, after which he cut him in pieces and roasted some portions before the fire and boiled others. And when all were duly prepared, he kept them ready for use. The hour for the banquet came, and Harpagus appeared, and with him the other guests, and all sat down to the feast. Astyages and the rest of the guests had joints of meat served up to them, but on the table of Harpagus nothing was placed except the flesh of his own son. This was all put before him, except the hands and feet and head, which were laid by themselves in a covered basket. When Harpagus seemed to have eaten his fill, Astyages called out to him to know how he had enjoyed the repast. On his reply that he enjoyed it excessively, they whose business it was brought him the basket, in which were the hands and feet and head of his son, and bade him open it and take out what he pleased. Harpagus accordingly uncovered the basket and saw within it the remains of his son. The sight, however, did not scare him or rob him of his self-possession. Being asked by Astyages if he knew what beast's flesh it was that he had been eating, he answered that he knew very well, and that whatever the king did was agreeable. After this reply, he took with him such morsels of the flesh as were uneaten, and went home, intending, as I conceive, to collect the remains and bury them. After dealing with Harpagus, King Astyages went again to seek the assistance of his magi in how he should deal with young 10-year-old Cyrus. The magi, hearing the full story, now switch on their original interpretation and tell Astyages he no longer needs to worry, as this boy Cyrus has already fulfilled his prophecy of becoming king over his village boys, and that this happens all the time for the Magi, where a reading will prove correct, but on a significantly smaller scale than originally anticipated. So in the end, no harm done, as the Magi interpretation of the dream was correct, but the prophecy fulfilled itself on a level that does not threaten Astyages anymore. So, no longer feeling threatened by the existence of his grandson Cyrus, Astyages sent him to go live in Persia. Cyrus would live there for several years as a subject to Astyages and the Median Empire. However, over time, Cyrus would continue to gain renown and popularity for his leadership, courage, and competence. With Cyrus growing in popularity, Harpagus saw an opportunity for Cyrus to overthrow the king Astyages and claim the throne for himself. And Harpagus, remember, this is the general of Astyages, who now severely wants to overthrow the king after the king made Harpagus eat his own son for dinner. Over time, Harpagus would have letters secretly sent to Cyrus in Persia telling him of his royal lineage, what had happened to him as a baby, and just inciting him to assemble a Persian army and march against Astyages and the Medes, to which Cyrus obliged Harpagus. Hearing of the incoming Persian invader force, King Astyages assembled an army to hold and defend, but he had made the mistake of placing Harpagus as the army's general. Harpagus and his troops would lay down their arms to join Cyrus and the Persian Revolutionary Army. Astyages then retreated to his city and armed every man, old and young, to try and mount a desperate final defense force. As one of his final orders, Astyages, who also had revenge on his mind at this point for his trusted magi, who incorrectly told him to let Cyrus live, so in order to satiate that taste for revenge, he had those magi impaled. The revenge tour would end here, though, for Astyages, as his army would be decisively defeated by Cyrus and the Persians, with Astyages being taken prisoner by Cyrus. Now, with Astyages as a prisoner, Harpagus rejoiced at being able to ask his former king how it felt going from king to slave. Astyages, though, instead hurled insult at Harpagus, declaring him the silliest and the most unjust of men. Silliest because he had orchestrated a revolt, but instead of securing the throne for himself, gave the throne away to Cyrus. And unjust because he got his revenge on Astyages by screwing over all of the Median people by not replacing Astyages with a fellow Mede, but rather a foreigner, being that Persian man Cyrus. As disgruntled as Astyages was, though, there was no changing what had happened, as he sat there prisoner to the grandson he had dreamt 20-ish years earlier would eventually overthrow him and become king of all of Asia. And now, thrust into the story, we have King Croesus. King Croesus was king of the Lydian Empire, the neighboring empire to the formerly Median Empire, but now newly Persian. This King Croesus is portrayed as a highly optimistic rich man with large ambitions. Croesus also happened to be the brother by marriage of Astyages, so upon being informed that Astyages had been overthrown by a Persian named Cyrus, Croesus was immediately intrigued with the idea of dethroning the Cyrus out of vengeance for his brother-in-law. However, Croesus was a religious man, would not act first without consulting his trusted oracles. One of these oracles in particular was the infamous Oracle at Delphi. The Oracle of Delphi was a very important person in ancient Greece. She also was known as the Pythia and was a priestess who lived in the temple of Apollo at Delphi, a sacred site in Greece. People from all over the world would come to ask her questions about the future or for advice. She would go into a trance, and it was believed that the god Apollo would speak through her, giving answers and guidance. These answers were often mysterious and open to interpretation. The oracle's pronouncements influenced many important decisions in ancient Greece, from matters of state to personal affairs. Croesus sent messengers to the oracle to ask two things. First, if the Lydians should attack the Persians, and secondly, if so, should Lydia seek the assistance of an ally? The Pythia then delivered the prophecy, and I quote, that if Croesus attacked the Persians, he would destroy a mighty empire. This seemingly vague response would be taken half-glass full by Croesus, who believed that this meant he would destroy the Persian empire. Croesus sent another messenger afterwards to ask how long his own empire would last, to which the Pythia told him, "Wait till the time shall come when a mule is monarch of Media. Then, thou delicate Lydian, away to the pebbles of Hermus. Haste, haste thee away, nor blush to behave like a coward." And as cryptic as this message was, Croesus was reportedly more excited about this answer in particular, as he thought there would never be a day where a mule rules over Media. With the oracle's messages, Croesus would prepare his military to march towards Cappadocia, which was under Persian control now. This wasn't without disagreement, though, as one of his advisors told Croesus, "Thou art about, O king, to make war against men who wear leathern trousers and have all their garments of leather, who feed not on what they like, but on what they can get from a soil that is sterile and unkindly, who do not indulge in wine, but drink water, who possess no figs nor anything else that is good to eat. If then thou conquerest them, what canst thou get from them? Seeing that they have nothing at all. But if they conquer thee, consider how much that is precious thou wilt lose. If they once get a taste of our pleasant things, they will keep such hold of them that we shall never be able to make them lose their grasp. For my part, I am thankful to the gods that they have not put into the hearts of the Persians to invade Lydia." But Croesus was not moved by this wise advice. Croesus remained strong in his reasoning in attacking Persia, as he wanted revenge in honor of his brother-in-law Astyages, and because of the way he interpreted the oracle's message to mean that his revenge mission would be a guaranteed success. The first major confrontation between the two forces occurred at a city known as Sinope in the Cappadocian region of Persian lands. It was an offensive initiated by Croesus against the Syrian people who lived in this area. He marched into the district of Teria here, besieging the city and enslaving the inhabitants, who had never done anything outright against Croesus to warrant such punishment. Hearing of this, Cyrus would begin levying armies from each territory he passed through en route to Tyria, thus snowballing the size of his military, as he was very successful in rallying combatants to join him and his cause. By the time he had reached the army of Croesus, Cyrus' army now was larger than that of the Lydians. On the first day of combat between both sides, no major gain was made by either side, as both fought valiantly and violently to a stalemate, with both taking heavy casualties. Croesus and the Lydians held defensive position the next day, expecting another attack by Cyrus, but that never came. So Croesus assumed that this would be the end of the military campaigns until the spring came back around, as both sides would regroup and plan the next step during the coming winter months. Cyrus, however, had other plans. He saw an opportunity here to hurry his army towards the Lydian capital Sardis and take down the Lydians before they would have an opportunity to fully mobilize their army and vast network of allies. So Cyrus hightailed over to Sardis and eventually met the Lydian army right outside the capital in the plains for battle. The Lydian army was by no means a pushover either. In fact, Herodotus writes that in all Asia, there was not at that time a braver or more warlike people than the Lydians. Their manner of fighting was on horseback, they carried long lances, and were clever in the management of their steeds. Cyrus, knowing the prestige of this Lydian cavalry, had to think of a strategy on the go to deal with that problem. And that is where our old friend Harpagus comes back into the story. Remember Harpagus, the general who was forced to eat his own son, then in revenge helped Cyrus overthrow Astyages and the Medes? Well, he is still around, serving alongside Cyrus as one of his main military generals. Harpagus suggests to Cyrus that they utilize their camels in the battle, as horses have a natural fear of camels. Cyrus agrees, and thus he orders his men to take horseback on the camels and places these camels at the front of his army as to meet the Lydian cavalry head on. The plan works masterfully, as many of the horses refuse to engage with the camels, which the Lydians prove courageous and are forced to disembark from horseback and fight the Persians on foot. But this, as you may imagine, goes poorly for them, and they are beat, forcing any survivors to retreat back into the city walls of Sardis. The Persian force would have the impenetrable city of Sardis besieged for only 14 days before they would eventually sack it and take its former king, Croesus, into custody. Our historian Herodotus ties this all back together by writing, "Thus too did Croesus fulfill the oracle, which said that he should destroy a mighty empire by destroying his own." After being taken prisoner by Cyrus and the Persians, Croesus sent a messenger to the oracle at Delphi to see why it was they lied to him and encouraged him to attack the Persians if he in fact was not going to destroy the Persian Empire at all. The Pythia responded to Croesus by saying, "For when the god told him that if he attacked the Persians, he would destroy a mighty empire, he ought, if he had been wise, to have sent again and inquired which empire was meant, that of Cyrus or his own. But if he neither understood what was said, nor took the trouble to seek for enlightenment, he has only himself to blame for the result. Besides, he had misunderstood the last answer which had been given him about the mule. Cyrus was that mule." For the parents of Cyrus were of different races and of different conditions. His mother, a Median princess, daughter of King Astyages, and his father, a Persian and a subject, who though so far beneath her in all respects, had married his royal mistress. Hearing this message from the Pythia, Croesus was finally able to admit fault for his decision, and thus admit fault for the fall of his empire. I hope you enjoyed that tale from history as we dove into one of the goats of history in the histories of Herodotus. Herodotus has tons of other amazing tales from the past in his history he wrote over 2,000 years ago, which we will certainly be exploring more of in the coming weeks on this channel. So if that intrigues you at all, make sure to subscribe to my channel and we will continue looking at glimpses of the past together. Other than that, if you have any recommendations for future historical videos, comments about this tale, or just anything else here you want to say, feel free to leave a comment and I will get back to you. Have a great day, everyone, and as Cicero said, Vixere.